Sweet, that's recording. G'day everyone. Going to do a quick word from the sponsors. Sponsor is me. Children's Books by Aaron White on Facebook. We have Australian Paramedics, Australian Surf Lifesavers, and this one I've actually partnered up with Surf Lifesaving Australia. So every time you purchase a book, money goes to them as well. So help them out. You got Australian Defence Force Machines, Mining Machines Colouring In Book, Australian Police Vehicles, Australian Firefighters, Australian Mining Machines. And for the adults, we have a hilarious novel about all the dodgy stuff and crazy stuff that happens up working FIFO up north. So FIFO by Aaron Weston, available at Aaron Weston Author Instagram account and also Aaron Weston Author Facebook. So yeah, just go to the Facebook pages, Children's Books by Aaron White, click on the Shop Now button, get the kids' books, Aaron Weston Author, Facebook and Instagram, Shop Now button or the link, and boof, away you go. All right, we'll get into it. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Aaron White Show. We have a fantastic guest today. It's Brad McDonnell, and Brad guides and mentors stepdads with their inward journey and just basically helps them coordinate like their journey. And I'll let him explain it a lot better than what I would be able to do it. So anyway, welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you very much for having me, Aaron. I really appreciate the invitation.
Nice.
Yeah. Basically, what I do, amongst a lot of things, what you just touched on about mentoring and guiding stepdads, that's a huge part of what I do. But also, in that is navigating the tricky waters of blended family life. More and more these days, men especially are getting to their mid 30s to early 40s without actually having any children themselves. So in my specific experience being a first time stepdad and navigating all the issues that sort of pop up for there. So that's been a massive journey for myself. And trying to sort of look for places and look for sort of resources to go to be able to provide some sort of support or guidance or mentoring. And I just sort of couldn't find anything. And actually in that blended family, each blended family is so unique. So not one set of family has the same sort of attributes, if you could use the word. So yeah, so I think one of the stepfamilies.org, one of the ones in Australia, it's sort of normal families have a family tree. Step families and blended families have a blended forest. It's just like a forest. It's not just one particular tree where everyone sort of branches off. It's unique touching points everywhere. So, and I've had so many different experiences within my relationship with Melissa, who's my partner, and my two stepsons, Zane and Tyler. So the two boys are 10 and 8, and I've been with Melissa for 2.5 years. And, you know, on that sort of roller coaster of being in a blended family and being a first-time stepdad with any sense of responsibility besides myself has been quite the journey itself. So, and that's why I started stepping into dads, was having a platform and some resources to be able to assist other men who are going through the same thing. And the second half of my life is, all about giving back and being able to provide men and families or blended families a place to be actually have some navigation through those sort of trickier times. Yeah.
And how do you do that? Have you got do you do retreats or do you do a podcast or a blog, or where do people find this type of stuff?
Yeah, so we've got it. We've got some new upcoming courses coming up, which is be more of a 6-month guided mentorship program. But yeah, starting locally, just being able to provide some groups, just to be able to actually have some sort of support without having. The number one thing for stepping into dads is 100% responsibility, and that's 100% responsibility for where you are in this point in time. Because as men, sometimes we go down the track of blaming all of our external environment for some of the things that are happening internally. So one of the number one things is just taking on, that sense of 100% responsibility, and then creating some disciplines in and around that to say, well, these triggers or these things that are happening to me on the outside are really just a reflection of what's sort of boiling and simmering away on the inside. So, I'm a part of a few groups that we offer some retreats. Basically, gives us the opportunity to sort of detach ourselves from everyday reality and create a container for men to actually drop into and become vulnerable without the added pressures of everything that's going on, and the expectations of what you should and shouldn't be doing in a family environment, but offering some support, some guidance, and you know, ultimately the only person that's going to be able to give you that nourishment and that nurturing is going to be yourself. So it's all about taking responsibility and then just shining the light back on yourself and looking at those feelings that are coming up, where they're coming from, and sometimes they're coming from some childhood traumas from from your mum or your dad. So that mother trauma or that father trauma that sort of we carry on as men to, we pick up early at age, and then, we get busy, and then these things start popping up when we start to become in family units and then start fathering or mothering ourselves. So, yeah, so we've got retreats that we do. We've got we're partnering up with a few companies to do those retreats. We've got a rites of passage that we're doing this year for stepdads and their stepsons, which will be in June this year on the Gold Coast. So yeah, we're just trying to be able to do one step at a time and be able to build things organically, and be able to support as many men as we can, but not actually tell people what to do, because as I said at the beginning, we're all on this journey, and it's so unique to each family unit. Like in that, my blended family unit is, I've actually got a really good relationship with Melissa's ex-husband. So yeah, so that's unique. So, and some relationships don't, but you're still always going to have a reflection as a man, as being in your own kingdom. You still want to be able to feel like you're the king and you're the alpha male in that family unit. And sometimes it just doesn't work that way. So it's about having some tools and some tricks to actually go, oh shit, okay, I need to look at myself here. This is my ego talking, or no, I authentically feel this way, and I've got to have the ability and the skill set to actually communicate that clearly. And I think as a man, I think sometimes, I know in the past, I really, really struggled with communicating clearly on how I felt, not necessarily, that was coming from, a deep seated not liking myself. So, it's all about trying to give us some tools and tricks just to be able to go back within to look at some of those answers that we have lying underneath those covers a little bit.
Ah, it's very interesting what you're just saying. Hey, can I ask you a personal question? Have you had any childhood trauma yourself?
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
I feel like it's something. I just listened to something the other day, which is really, really cool. It's like the part of the work we're doing in that childhood trauma, you don't want to keep reliving that experience from that trauma aspect. You want to be able to see where the actual feeling and the emotion is the thing acting out. So you want to be able to get to the point where you actually feel that feeling and be able to go, shit, what is this? What is this? And, why am I acting this out in my now relationships or relationships with my stepchildren? And well, for me, it's my experience from my childhood trauma. My dad and I get along fantastically now, but, earlier on in life, he had an experience where his father, was from the World War, that generation of men that come from the war, and they weren't taught how to feel or express themselves emotionally. So they either went to drinking or they went to violence. And, there was a lineage of violence in my family that sort of got passed down from one generation to the next. And, I was on the other end of that violence from my father. And basically, I don't blame my father for that experience, but what it's taught me is it's given me the impotence to actually go, shit, I've got to actually take responsibility for, and I take great pride in this, is to take responsibility for that not to happen again. It's my responsibility and in my lineage to say, hey, that stops here, and I'm going to do the work on myself to be able to actually, when those feelings come up, look at them and see where they come from. And I know in my relationship with Melissa and my relationship with my stepsons, it's one of those things we're actually programmed so heavily by the way that our parents parented us. And I think it's just about looking at taking away all the positive stuff that they did, but also have that awareness around some of the things that they just had no awareness to at that stage of their lives. So, one of that big responsibility is to heal that anger and that violence that that holds and sits inside the body and gets triggered when we feel like we're either abandoned or some of these attachment styles that come out, that play out in our relationships also. So it's when you start the journey of doing the work, it's like it's just the layers just keep peeling back and peeling back and peeling back. And it's just these, at the time when you're in them, they don't feel like gifts, but afterwards, you can talk about them, and it's just that experience of go, okay, well, I don't want to repeat that. So I've got to take responsibility for that. Um, and as men, the only way that we learn is through experience. And usually that experience is through pain. As boys, we sort of tend to, let's touch the fire, we'll get burnt. We can be told 1,000 times, but until we actually touch the fire and get burnt, we actually learn the lesson. And I feel that sort of plays out more and more as we get older. And once we start getting into relationships and, how do we relate to women was a big thing for me as well as part of my trauma. Is I had terrible relationships through my 20s and 30s, and I never was taught how to treat a woman properly. And, I spent a lot of time by myself to be able to, really isolated myself to just to say, shit, that's the way that I'm acting and the way that I'm speaking and the way that I'm showing up for women in my life. It's just not okay. So it's about coming back to that point of taking responsibility, and then, okay, I can't change the past, but what I can do is be present with what's happening now and have the fortitude to actually change that.
So did you just look at women like most guys do in their 20s just as sex objects and stuff like that, and now you're trying to look deeper into it to form like a relationship? Is that where that was? Or
Yeah, I just had no awareness to energetically. I think it wasn't until I got recommended the book, and this is just a classic, the Way of the Superior Man by a gentleman called David Dieta. It's the sort of number one book every man should read from about the age of 17. I didn't get this book till my mid 30s, and God, I wish I got it in my 20s. So yeah, it's basically about the energy that you encapsulate as a man, and that feminine energy that which we've got all inside of us, but just that grounding and that solidness. And I was really not, your word is your bond, honor what you're going to say you're going to do, that trustworthiness, a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I never did. So for me, in that space of relating, because we're in relationship to everything, and I was in a shit relationship to myself, and that just replicated to every other area of my life, and become the victim of my relationships with other people, because I was acting out something that I just wasn't aware of. And it's not until you gain that little bit of awareness in sections of your life, you start to play this game of putting the puzzle together. And it's like, one piece of the puzzle sort of leads to the next piece of the puzzle. And so you start to gain this momentum, and, through that pain of awareness sometimes, because it can become quite, when you start dipping into that sense of awareness, it's fucking not nice, because you look in the mirror and you actually look in the mirror and you go, do I actually like this guy that I'm looking at? It's a huge piece. And once you start, I spent a fair bit of time in nature and in solitude, to give myself the time just to actually go within and just to really feel. Just being as a male, being numb, numbed down from distractions and, through social media, for everything, for porn, for everything. This is just a distraction. And once we sit in nature, we've got the ability to just to feel. Now, the indigenous culture's got it right. Like, the rites of passages that they used to have, where, we'd be able to sit in nature and be able to actually feel that we're part of nature. It's not nature and us, we are nature. So yeah, that's a lot of those things. A lot of those things sort of culminated for me over a period of about 3 to 4 years, where I was just like, oh. And then I got into this thing of bypassing that whole relating thing, where I was by myself for a period of time, where I went, oh fuck, this is it. I've got the top knot, I've got the beard, like wearing the garb. One of the greatest teachers that I follow is mentors is a guy called Ram Dass, and he talks about the holy phonies. We get to spiritually bypass all the stuff that we feel, and it's all right. I can sit in my ashram over here and not have to deal with the realities out here, but sooner or later you're going to have to be able to be in that, to be whole of everything that goes on, and that's all in relationship to each other. So yeah.
Well, you touched on an interesting thing. So you went to nature, did the solitude thing. What, did you go see a guru or something? Or I feel, what's this story? What did you do?
So the backstory to that is basically about 4 years ago. I sat down, and I was in a 7-year relationship at the time, and I just wasn't. I was just so numb. I was, I had a really, really amazing job. I was doing fantastically financially. I was living in the city in Brisbane. Had a great unit overlooking the city. Living a fantastic life. Cash wasn't a problem. Traveling a fair bit, but there was just something inside of me. I was looking for something outside of myself instead of looking for that within. So I basically just sold everything, and split up with my partner, and just took a black duffel bag, North Face bag, and I had a couple of mates that had been on a journey, on an inward journey for a couple of years, and they said, we're living up on the Sunshine Coast at a shack, paying like $50 a week. Come and join us if you want. We're just sort of like flowing of the universe and seeing where life takes us. And so I just jumped on that journey, and just watched the magic unfold of when you're actually not doing so much as a man, just like actually being embodied into that flow of the feminine aspect of us, like just flowing with the universe, just floating. And I did that, and we just traveled. We started an online business that was selling supplements to give us enough cash to keep moving around the place. And moved from the Sunshine Coast, spent a bit of time over in the US, spent some magical times with some incredible doctors over in the US with some mineral products that we were selling into the market, into the supplement market. And then met some quantum physicists, and just started actually just reaching out into universal languages. And then come back from America to Australia, and lived in Tassie for 4 months out of a car. So I really got to experience what it was like to actually just go with the flow, using that term. And it was incredible actually being by myself, to actually realize, because that was an attachment for me, was always I had to be with somebody to actually feel something. And I was getting that feeling from just being in nature, or being like just meeting all these incredible people along the way. And it was just one person would flow into the next, and it was just this beautifully guided journey that we went on, and went out to the middle of the country, out to Uluru, and had some magical times out there. So it was just an experience that I become so addicted to. But then I sort of said, right, well, where can I take this to the next level? Like you're saying, like, let's go to an ashram or a guru, let's go to India. So I had plans to go to India. I come back to the Gold Coast to visit some family, and Melissa, my partner, was networking and connecting on Facebook, because I had another project which was called Sunshine Lighthouse, which we were basically building these domes on people's properties, to actually people to go out and just basically just check out of reality for a bit, and just be nurtured and loved. And so all the stuff that money we're earning was trying to fund these projects. And then Melissa, my now partner reached out and said, "Hey, what's the Sunshine Lighthouse projects you got going?" I said, "Oh, let's catch up. We'll connect and talk." And so you think you're on this one path, and then I said, "Oh, okay." I had this dream to go to India to basically just chill out for 6 to 12 months and deepen the meditative experience and so forth. And yeah, as soon as I met Melissa, she sat down and I just went, "Oh fuck, I'm gone here." It was supposed to be a catch up coffee for 10 or for half an hour, and it turned into like an 8 hour catch up. So yeah, how quickly life can just shift and turn and pivot. And she was super open from the beginning, and it was the most present I've ever been in my life. And it was just this experience of I've met this beautiful woman who's just super open with me, and we'd been in this amazing conversation, and we just shared everything. And she said to me, she goes, "Oh, my life is completely different to yours. I've got 2 kids, an ex-husband, 2 dogs, and a cat, and a half renovated house." And in my ego, I said, "Yeah, that's all right. That's no problems. I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow, if it works out." And I was under this illusion that I'd just keep moving and traveling, but the attraction and the connection more so was so deep that we basically just stayed together from that point onwards. And then that was just like a stopping of one journey, and a lot of things fell over with the supplement business. And a few things happened that sort of, I got shafted with, but that was all part of the perfect plan. Yeah, and then Melissa and I just moved in straight away. And then this whole thing unfolded where where I thought I bypassed all of these childhood things with me growing up, had basically just slammed me in the face. And when I was in this like blended family unit, and Melissa, she warned me. She said it's a whole lot, and I said, no, I've got this. And I could sit on the end of the couch and look into her eyes and say all these big words and give her these emotions and feelings. But it wasn't until you're actually in it, and you're actually experiencing these feelings that are coming up. And the 2 boys, Zane, he's born in April, I'm born in April. We're back exactly carbon copy of each other. So it's really, really amazing to actually see these 2 boys, which are very, very similar to me in a lot of ways as well too. So yeah, it's and that was a start of another journey in the sense of our relationship, which is a huge piece too, which was, part of that was, my, seeing into death. We have had 2 deaths in the family, that was just a great awakening to basically life, which is, I think the 2 greatest gifts we can actually experience in life, like through others or for ourselves, is birth and death. There's such a beautiful process with it's hard, but the process of dying is, if you're really present with it, it's such a beautiful gift, because you get to see and feel a lot. And yeah, so that was another journey on its own.
Can you talk more about that? When you say seeing into death, so someone's close to you has died and they gave you a reality check to start living more in the moment or something? Is that where you're going with that?
Yeah, a little bit. So the journey that Melissa and I had with that was probably about 3 or 4 months into our relationship. So Melissa's mum had her 70th. We met in August. Her mum had her 70th in October, and she was saying to Melissa, "I want you to bring someone to the 70th." So her mum sort of called this in. So it was a really, really cool experience. And her mum basically found out, she had, just after her 70th birthday, just found out she had got terminal cancer. She had breast cancer, and it was riddled all through her body. It was the second time she had it. So from October, November, Melissa nursed her mother to her passing in January. So November, January, it was 2 years last week that her mother passed away. And that was basically within 3 months. I was looking after the boys full time whilst Melissa was off nursing her mum. So the boys and I had to learn quickly and adapt to each other quite quickly. And just seeing Melissa go through that process, and Melissa, my partner's a breathwork practitioner, and the breath is such a huge part of her life, and her mother, yeah, she was there holding and consoling her mother in her last breaths. And then that was just such a huge experience. And then once that was over, it was close to my 40th birthday. And a week before my 40th, or 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, I got a phone call about my granddad about to pass. And instinctively, intuitively, I went, oh, I've got to get there. So I just jumped on a plane. I got to New Zealand. That's where a lot of my family are. And basically spent the last 4 or 5 days with bedside with my granddad. And that was huge. It triggers a thing called a death urge, which one of our teachers talks about, is this death urge, that there's a trigger inside of you that goes off once you see that passing of your own mortality sort of comes up. And it's also, you actually see there's a process when people die, where, especially at that elderly age, where, it can be like a 2-week to 3-week process. And it's like that 3 or 4 days, there's a lot of the ego starts to go. So a lot of that pureness we have as human beings starts coming up, and this purity of connection, this seeing of, that soul is actually starting to lift out of the body. And yeah, it's just it was a magical experience. It was one of the toughest things I had to do, because I had all my family there, and I felt like the 3 or 4 years before, how that prepared me for that very experience, where, just being able to be present with my granddad. And I remember this one moment where we moved my granddad from one room to the others, and the nurses said, he's on his passing journey right now, and we'll give you some privacy in a private room. And I remember it was just granddad and I, and just this innocence that everyone had left the room. And I said, I'll take him to the next room. It was 20 meters down the hallway. And I was with him, and he was looking me in the eyes, and it starts to get me emotional now. I was like looking him in the eyes and just said, mate, like, I won't leave you. He looked like this child that never wanted to be abandoned. And he wasn't scared, but he just wanted to know that someone was there. And that experience just shook me to the core, because I was just going, oh, like, I held my granddad in such reverence, World War II veteran, last surviving World War II veteran in the North Island of New Zealand. Just he did everything, and sacrificed a lot to be a farmer on the farm, but wanted to fly planes all his life. So that was an experience to be able to be present with that, and to be able to watch then my mum and my aunties and the rest of my family, well, they turned into little girls, like mourning their fathering, or the passing of their father. And it was the shifting dynamics to be really present through that experience, and to be able to actually experience him actually passing from this reality to whatever the next reality is. It was super special, and it was a profound shift. And I didn't process it very well for a long time. I internalized a lot of that. And, just sitting with him after he passed, just in the room with him and I. And yeah, it's a tragic experience for some people's death, but it's the one sure thing that's gonna happen to all of us. So I feel spending time to be present with it, and having some awareness when you're in it. It can be a gift. It can be a gift. And Melissa and I shared basically the exact same experience, her with her mother, and mine with a granddad in his passing. And it's special. It was only a couple of months apart, so we have all these succinct things happening in our lives. And so we've been tested on our relationship also too. So it's just a big roller coaster, really.
Here's a question for you. Have you done the the deathbed journey, where you swap roles with your granddad, and you're on your deathbed, you're surrounded by the ones you love and everything, and you're looking back on your life, and then, so basically it's to help figure out what you actually want to do with your life. So you're figuring yourself you only got a week to live or whatever, you're looking back on your life, what did you actually want to accomplish in your life and stuff? Have you ever done that?
No, I haven't, but I haven't, but it sounds pretty similar to, like role playing that situation of, what have I done in my life so far that if that was to be the case, how would I feel right now and the journey that I'm on? Yeah, well, I feel that by experiencing that role with my granddad is, you know, it just for me now, it's just like I said at the start of this interview, it's like, my next, part of my life is about giving back, and I don't take that lightly because a lot of people say that, but it's about helping as many people as I can in the niche and where my skill sets marry up to the people that I can help. I'm not naive to think I'm going to help thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. I don't think that's for some people, but I think for the wider community, it's about you know sitting with yourself and being able to do the work on yourself, to be able to provide, consistently committing to doing the work within yourself, to be able to provide that for your family, for your kids, and for other people that are attracted to that and your experience and your journey as well too. So yeah, that's a valuable experience to be able to have that. Am I living? I mean, that what comes up for me when you say that is, am I living a meaningful life right now?
Yeah.
Is that as a man, our greatest thing is what? Freedom, to feel free and to um, be able to feel free and to be able to having some sort of, not force on life, but having this meaning in life, that this life and these experiences that you've gone through haven't been for nothing.
Yeah.
Like even what you're doing, it's incredible what you're doing. For me and the sort of the man that I am, to be doing the FIFO thing, like you couldn't pay me $1 million to be able to do that. But what I love about what you're doing, what attracts me to what you're doing, is you're providing this experience and you're sharing it, and you're not sitting back and just basically, you know, being a victim of some of your circumstances, which the FIFO stuff does have on, the dark and light of that, So it's, you're in, once a man is in meaning and like having some deep meaning to what they do, that to me is that experience of sitting on your deathbed going, yeah, have I had a fucking crack it? Or have I just sat back and tried to blame everyone else for the shit that I'm in right now?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good exercise.
What is your rite of passage that you're doing with the kids? Are you doing,
Um,
you're doing it with the stepdads and the kids? Is that right? Or you just,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. As I think harboring and nurturing positive stepfather, or whatever term, bonus parent, or whatever you want to call it, and stepsons is really important, because I think that rites of passage journey for any father and son's so important. It's the number one thing that every father should be doing with their son, like period. Um, I think a lot of men these days are so busy doing everything else that it's not until their sons get into their 20s or 30s that they actually realize that they actually haven't given them the purpose for what they've actually here for. Um, so yeah, the rites of passage that we've designed is basically a group of facilitators that have had experience within that stepfather role, either be it a stepson or a stepdad, to be able to provide that container, to be able to look into those unique things that happen within that unit. Like for me as a stepdad, the two boys always look up to their dad, regardless of whatever he does. They always put their dad on the pedestal. Like, it's not my job or my role to take that pedestal off those boys, but I see my role is just to be able to provide the boys um, another way to look at life. And I think we've gone so far away from that that, Indigenous cultures, we bash the word community, but living in like a sense of community, like the real sense of the word community. I think we've gone away from the uncle side of things. Like I spent a bit of time with Indigenous cultures, and it's like there's uncles and aunties and stuff like that, where there's not so much pressure on mum and dad to have this nuclear family that is providing all the resources and all the training for all these kids. Like, I don't know about you, but a man for me in my 40s, like, I haven't got my shit worked out, and I'm trying to bring these kids up to go, this is how you should do it, son. Like, this is the way. It's bullshit. Like, the skill sets that I've got, are tapped out in certain areas. And Glenn, he's funny enough, we're born 2 weeks apart. So we're basically, basically the same age, and we're similar in a lot of ways, but completely different in others. So that's where the boys can, that's why enhancing the positive attributes of what he's doing, and also showing them, hey, like, there's a different way to live life. This is another way to do it. It's like, there's no right or wrong. You've got to see and feel what feels good for you. And that's the rites of passage for stepsons and stepdads is really, really important. So we haven't done one yet. This will be our first one, and we're super excited about it. So yeah, that's in June of this year.
Is it going to be out in nature or something like that? And you guys could do some team building activities and stuff like that?
Yes.
Or is it just a chat?
Yeah, no. It's what we're going to do. It'll definitely be an immersion, because everything that for males, everything's got to be experiential, right? Like, I know we've got a big online thing going on at the moment, which is fantastic, but as men, we've got to get together and basically experience, things, and experience challenges together, be able to support each other through those challenges, and actually from that challenging and support, we actually grow. And that's the important part is, without those challenges, there's no growth. And I think that's what a lot of men are looking for. Just funny enough, today I caught up with some friends I hadn't seen in, 10 years. And, they still see you in a certain aspect. You've done all this work, and your ego's going, well, hey, I'm over here. I've done all this work. I'm not that same person over there. But it's actually nice to actually, I think you don't need to talk about what you're doing. You just got to be actually, as a man, you just got to be actually walking that walk, and everything else will emanate from that.
Yep, you just could do it instead of talk about it. Hey, we've just hit the 40-minute mark. So
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
It goes quick, eh? Hey, where can people find you online and stuff?
Yeah. We've got our latest course intake on steppingintodads.com. And you just basically register for the upcoming courses on social media, stepping into dads, and the same on Facebook as well, Stepping Into Dads. You can find us on all those handles there. I've got a podcast as well called the Stepping Into Dads podcast.
Is that on YouTube or is it just on Spotify and Apple Podcasts?
Yeah, it's on Apple, Spotify, and we've got the YouTube channel Stepping Into Dads as well too. So all of those handles, just look up Stepping Into Dads and you'll find us.
Awesome stuff. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Did you have fun?
Yeah, mate, it was awesome. Thank you very much. It's just great. You just getting into it, and I love sharing, and as I said, I love being of service. So if it just helps one person and be able to connect with people, it's all I want to keep doing. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
No, thanks for coming on. It was actually a really interesting story. Well, I better wrap it up. Well, yeah, that's a wrap. I'd like to thank Brad again for coming on the show, and I'd like to thank you, the listener, for listening. Please tell a friend about the podcast and have a fantastic day. All right, bye.